In this week's Strength in Numbers segment here on Cold Hard Football Facts on the Pulse Network, Butch Stearns and Kerry Byrne alongside, we look specifically every week at one unit, an offense or a defense, and we're going to look at Houston's defense. They've gotten a lot of press. As a matter of fact, you wrote an SI.com column a couple of weeks ago about the turnaround in their defense. It has been remarkable, however, and let's use your numbers to see how remarkable it's actually been. You look at last year with Mario Williams, the number one pick in the draft, putting pressure on the quarterback. They still gave up almost 400 yards a game and almost 30 points a game. Wade Phillips comes in a shortened season with a lockout, changes over to a 3-4 defense. They got some guys on there, Brian Cushing. They brought in Jonathan Joseph, who used to be with, who's a pretty good corner, but it's become a shutdown corner. Look at your ratings and the defensive passer rating. And this is 2010 on the left and 2011 on. Kerry, look at those numbers and talk about them. It's remarkable.
Detail on SI. We like defensive passer rating because it has such a direct correlation to winning football games. Not only were the Texans
worst to first in that number
in 1 year, but not only were they dead last year, they were one of the 10 worst pass defenses in the history of football.
Wow.
Only 10 teams in history had a defensive passer rating of worse than 100. They were 100.5. Now they're around 60 this year. They've improved by 40 points in that one indicator. You make life tough for opposing passes, you win football games. You get burnt, you can't win games. And despite this team has devoted a lot of resources, Butch, to defenders over the year. Brian Cushing, D'Amico Ryan, both of those guys rookies of the year. Mario Williams, a whole bunch of guys. They never played well. They were habitually a bad defense from the founding of the organization in 2002. Wade Phillips, like you said, in a shortened week, it's night and day, remarkable turnaround.
Now, you're very opinionated about Wade Phillips, and we'll get to him in just a second. But while we keep giving them accolades here, in your quality stats, the one that sticks out to me, they're number 2 in defensive hog index, without Mario Williams now for a couple of games. They're number 2 in passer rating differential. Only
Green Bay.
Yeah, only Green Bay is better than them in the way their quarterback is playing and is how their defense is playing against quarterbacks. But the one that really sticks out is their power ranking. They're the number 1 rated defense in football this year after being 20th last year in all your best quality stats across the board.
And since we introduced that 2 years ago, it's identified the Super Bowl champion each time. New Orleans was number 1 in 2009 across the board in our rankings, and Green Bay was number 1. Despite their 10-6 record, number 1 across the board in the stats we look at. So it's no surprise those two teams won the Super Bowl. I don't know if you obviously there's an injury now to Matt Schaub, Matt Leinart coming in. That passing offense is not going to be as good. But right now they are a legitimate, if Schaub is still in there, a legitimate contender, a legitimate Super Bowl team.
Well, as good as they've played defensively, you brought up the Schaub injury, and he's going to be out for the year. Assuming Leinart is just going to be serviceable, because it's all he's been in his career. Who knows? Maybe he lights the world on fire. In my opinion, this is his last chance. He's got weapons around him like he did in Arizona. He's got a chance to do it. He's been in the league for 5 years. All he can do is screw this up. They're 7-3, and they got an easier schedule down the stretch. But all that said, doesn't it obviously, or how do you correlate this? Without Schaub, doesn't it now really test this defense to see how good they are? Because they need to be as perfect as the Patriots offense or the New Orleans offense is.
No, they absolutely do. And, Leinart has, he's been, let's face it, a disappointment. He hasn't really been a full-time starter since, 2006, 2007. The guy's very inexperienced despite a big name everybody knows. And when he did have, time on the field, he did not produce. I think a 71,
with
72
Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, so they are really troubled. It would be, right now, I hate to say it, it would be kind of a miracle for this team, for this defense, no matter how good it is, to be able to carry this guy. You need a little bit of everything. You don't need to be great in any one area. You need to be good in everything, especially passing the ball decent, good on pass defense. If you're bad in one, it doesn't matter how good you are in the other, typically, but who knows? It'd be interesting to follow.
Now, you claim you are a pigskin potentate.
Potentate of pigskin,
Potentate of pigskin, but also a prognosticator, and I got to give you props on this, because you've been preaching this for a long time. You went to Boston College, let's be honest. You were there during the Doug Flutie days. Look, any of us of our generation worship at the altar of Flutie to some degree. He brought college football in this area to different heights we'd never been before. But you firmly believe, and you've written this, you've documented this, that there is a curse of Doug Flutie. I got to take exception with you. It really is the curse of Wade Phillips. But explain this. Now, this is basically all based on when Wade Phillips was the head coach of Buffalo. He benched Doug Flutie when they were 10-5, and all of a sudden bad things have happened.
Well, it's not only of bad things. Well, the story is before the 1999 playoffs, the Buffalo Bills were 10-5. Doug Flutie carries the team to that 10-5 record. Wade Phillips sits him for the last game of the year under the devious ruse, Butch, of purporting to give Rob Johnson a little playing time and rest his starting quarterback. Wade Phillips starts Doug Flutie for the playoff game at Tennessee. It ends with the play so inexplicable. It's called the Music City Miracle. And trouble has followed Wade Phillips. It's stuck with the Buffalo organization. They've never been back to the playoffs since that day. And every team that has hired Wade Phillips since then has been doomed to miserable failure. And we've chronicled this on SI.com and several times at Cold Hard Football Facts. Year after year after year, all the bad things that happen to teams that hire Phillips.
So the Music City Miracle, that he was in Dallas when Tony Romo got hurt. He was running the defense.
I cite three. There's three other teams he's been with, 4 teams he's been with since then. He was a defensive coordinator in Atlanta, defensive coordinator with San Diego, head coach with Dallas. All 3 of those teams at one point were a #1 seed in their conference, and all 3 of them failed to win a single playoff game.
So the curse has led to dogfighting with Michael Vick.
Michael Vick, it's that tragedy. And then last year, the Falcons at 13-3, #1 seed, don't win a playoff game. The Cowboys in 2007, #1 seed, 13-3. Hold on. No, best record in franchise history. Not only did they fail to win a playoff game, the first #1 NFC seed ever to fail to win a playoff game.
And so now this with Matt Schaub, according to you, because of the curse of Doug Flutie or Wade Phillips, is predictable.
Not only that, I predicted it 2 weeks before his injury that no matter how well, we were talking about the turnaround.
Texans fans love you.
And we talked about in the turnaround that the Texans defense has had. We said despite that, something will come back to bite this organization because of the curse of Doug Flutie. By the way, can I just give you the statistical signature, the hallmark of the curse of Doug Flutie? In his very last game in a Bills uniform in 2000, he posted a proverbial perfect passer rating, 158.3 passer rating. Only quarterback in the history of the Bills organization ever to have a perfect passer rating, never played again. It was a statistical middle finger to the Buffalo organization.
There you go, Flutie Flakes and Jim Kelly and everything else.
We say only a flake would doubt the curse of Flutie.